So we've looked at the first two steps, deciding whether incorporation is right for you and starting to do the project development. The third step we've already chatted about a little bit, the idea of, are you going to incorporate federally or provincially, because those are different processes. You go to different places to get it done. So I don't know if we need to say anything else about that.
No, as Frances said, if you're thinking about working internationally, or if you're thinking about working in a couple of different provinces, people generally decide to incorporate federally through Industry Canada. If you're thinking about only working in Quebec, provincial incorporation is all that you need.
So let's go to the next step, which is go to the Quebec government website and read the documentation, because it's actually in some ways quite self-explanatory, and it's good to do a first read through before you get into all of the details. After that,
absolutely. After that, we're starting to talk about the technical prep work. And I just want to emphasize, as you said, Frances, this guide tells you really exactly how to go about the steps to incorporating your organization. It's available in English and in French. So you can read through it, and the technical steps that we're going to talk about are all explained further there. They're also explained in our info sheet about incorporating your nonprofit. So just to review a couple of concepts, one of the first ones is that you'll absolutely need at least 3 people in order to have a founding board and to sign on this document that's your application to incorporate.
And if you don't have 3 people, it's probably a sign that really nonprofit isn't the way to go, because it's about a community endeavor, and so there should be a group of people that are already involved and that have been helping you build the organization.
And this would be when I would want to take a moment to talk about some of the great people we've seen contact COCO who really want to do good social justice work. They really want to work with the community sector, but they realize over time that it would be just as all right for them to have a for-profit business. They could work as consultants, they could start their own small business and work for social justice, but they want to work on their own, and that's okay. Some of us are lone wolves, some of us, it makes more sense to be in that structure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Another thing that's needed in terms of the technical work is the real fun part, the name search. You can't have a name that somebody else already owns, and so for a lot of us, when we're starting organizations such as COCO, the Center for Community Organizations, we had to come up with the name first, something that represents what it is you're really trying to go after, something that's catchy, that you feel people will remember, and then you've got to make sure that nobody else owns that name.
So the thing with the name search is, first of all, it's fascinating to see how many people have the name that you thought you wanted. So it's a real important step, as Frances said. I've looked up COCO before, and there's about 37 different versions. COCO is an acronym. There's no other version of Center for Community Organizations. You can do this for free, or you can pay for it. And if you want to go on the website and do it for free, and then print out to confirm that the name that you're looking for is available, that's the cheapest way to do it, and that's described a little bit more in the info sheet.
Yeah, and you have to have your name in French also. So if you're working in English, make sure that you have a French version of your name, because that is the legal name of your organization.
Absolutely. So it costs about $142 to fill in the application, and maybe there'll be a few other expenses as you're making photocopies or figuring things out, but it's not the most expensive procedure.
Yeah. And as you do all of that, you'll end up with something called your lettre patente, which are?
Your lettre patente is like your birth certificate of your organization. It has a little Quebec seal, it's written on fancy kind of paper, and it really says, congratulations, you've got a community organization that's incorporated. And those are pretty important documents that you're going to want to hold on to forever.
And that will have the 3 people who have started the organization, the legal name of the organization. You need to have an address that you're working from, and you need to have something called your objet, which is kind of like your very broad goals or mandates, areas that you're working in. And that's why you want to look at the charitable status videocast if you're thinking of going that route possibly, because you want to make sure that those broad objets really fit with what needs to be looked at for charitable status.
Absolutely. And you'll have another section that's called Autres dispositions, and it's so other objects, other issues, and they'll list them. And this is where you really want to pay attention to reading the guide and thinking, thinking what's necessary here for me if I'm thinking about charitable status. So an example is there's a little clause that allows your organization to receive donations. So if you're thinking about charitable status later, you would want to include that clause. There's also a place on the form where you want to say how much of a building you're allowed to own. So they'll give you an amount, like, are you allowed to own over $500,000 of real property. And this is always a really funny part for people when they're filling out the form, because they can't imagine that they would ever have $500,000 worth of real estate. But we urge people to think big, you know, and so that you don't have to make changes later.
And then going to the next step, number 6, which is?
Filling out the form. So here's where it's important to talk about the Quebec context for a moment. The form is available in English and in French, just like the guide, but you have to fill out the form in French. So the English version is just for reference. It's so that you understand the translation of the document, and you have to fill out the form in French. So one of the things you'll need to think about is translating whatever you're planning on writing and making sure that it's all in French. So for example, you have to write your board members, and you have to write what their occupation is. Now, you can't write teacher. You would have to write the French word for teacher.
Okay, so good to remember. Once you've submitted your form, the next step is?
So you have a choice. Either you're going to get your birth certificate, your letters patent in the mail, and you'll be celebrating that you did this, you incorporated, or they're going to send you a letter and say there was something wrong. Now, what's kind of neat about the Registraire des Entreprises, the enterprise register that's in charge of this in Quebec, is they won't charge you if you made a mistake. So they'll give you a chance, they'll tell you what you did wrong, and you can just resubmit it and pay for the first time.
And if you do get it, really important, celebrate. Take some time. We don't take enough time often, I think, in our community organizations to just sit back and say, hey, we did a good job, we got through this step, and enjoy the fact that you've got it. The other thing is really hang on to those papers. In fact, make some photocopies of them and distribute them a little bit widely among your members, just to make sure that they're in a safe place and that you can always access them, because you don't want to lose those papers.